This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
War Eagle Auburn fans, welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson. I'm also here with my buddy, Jared Davis. We just had the early signing period. It used to be called the early signing day, but now it's kind of like an open period where it's a short term where guys can sign. Typically, people sign on the day, December 20th this year. And Auburn currently, I think it's somewhere in the range of like, including transfers in, it's like 26 guys, I think. Maybe by the time you listen to this, maybe it's a little bit more. But it's really exciting to see that many guys. This staff. Think about last year. Like I was doing a little comparison of last year to this year, and Hugh Freeze had to come in really quickly and scrounge together a recruiting class, because when Harsin left, our recruiting class was 55th in the nation, which is absolutely unacceptable at Auburn. Thankfully, got that up to, I think, around like the 17, 19, kind of that range last year, which was pretty solid, like considering. And on top of that, he started to fill some of the gaps, like offensive line. But one of the key things that I noticed this class was, again, he did the same thing. He saw the needs and he went after them. I think very clearly all Auburn fans could see it. One of the biggest gaps, wide receivers. We went after and got a couple big 5-star wide receivers, and Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson. But we also got a couple others, Malcolm Simmons and Bryce Kane, who, everybody calls them sleepers, and they could legitimately be, because of how talented they are. Kind of like, in my mind, like a very high 4-star could really break out. So, Jared, I want to, before we dive into any specific players, give me your overall grade of this recruiting class and what Auburn put together this year, now fully having a year to recruit these guys.
I think it was pretty amazing. I'm in a vacuum, so I don't know what other teams are doing. I just keep hearing about the guys we're getting, and you look up and you're kind of like, oh, we're not number one, because you hear about all these studs. And, but the reality is, and Hugh Freeze said it too. He's like, we had another guy in the bag, and there was some late night calls made, and he's like, these people in our league are good at what they do. You got to stay diligent. And so other teams are, we're 7th in the nation, but 4th in the SEC. Like, that's just insane.
Yeah.
But it was a good.
That just means there's only 3 teams outside of the SEC better than us.
Yeah.
That just shows you how top heavy the SEC is.
Yeah, but we were better than LSU, better than Tennessee. We just weren't better. We weren't better than, and we're really 4th in the SEC because they're going ahead and counting Texas in the SEC. So it's 1, 2, and 3. So, I don't think you could, for a 6-6 team, I don't think you could have asked for more. And I will say this, I can't believe the first receiver I'm going to talk about is Bryce Kane, because we landed some studs, but read an article about him. I don't know anything about these guys. He reminds me, based off what the article was saying, I picture him being kind of like an Anthony Schwartz type guy, like next level speed. That could be the guy to take the top off, But obviously, Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, Patrick Nix he came out and said the best comparison for Cam Coleman is Calvin Johnson. If he's even half of that. And the crazy thing is, I think Cam Coleman is 16 years old. You can correct me on this. I'm pretty sure he's 16. He'll be 17 before he gets to Auburn. But that's insane. Those guys, here's the scary thing though, right? Hugh Freeze is still living off. And Perry Thompson even said it when he flipped to Auburn. Like, he's like, hey, if I was a defensive back, I'd go to Bama. Hugh Freeze has put guys in the NFL at receiver. We got to make good on this. Like, these guys got to go out there and be productive, because we're still living off the productive receivers at Ole Miss. That's what Hugh's selling, and now he's got his guys in. We need these guys to come in and be productive so we can keep building on that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and even the Patrick Nix tie, Cam Coleman came from Phoenix City, which is where Patrick Nix was the high school head coach there. And so there's lots of connections. And part of the draw obviously was, first off, I feel like Perry Thompson. And let's kind of sit on this for a minute. That Big Cat weekend was, in my mind, one of the biggest weekends for Auburn. And we thought in the moment like it was going to be really big, but the ripple effects started to come. Perry Thompson committed, and then they threw in Hugh Freeze into the pool, and then Malcolm Simmons in that same weekend committed, and then multiple
Riddick.
guys after that came just because they experienced that weekend, and that's pretty cool.
So we got two. I know for a fact. I mean, we got a guy that was a Bama and a Georgia commit to flip to us, and that just has not been happening. Barry Thompson was committed to Bama. Riddick, I think the linebacker, was committed to Georgia. And like we've not won those battles in the past, and people are going to talk about KJ Bolden. Georgia won out in the end, and we were thought to be the favorite, but he technically was still committed to FSU, so it's not like we lost that in that regard. But we went toe to toe with two of the best to ever do it, and won some battles there, and that's just a momentum shifter for the university, honestly.
100%. And to me, that's the bigger picture of like we are truly, in my mind, back with recruiting, and to get right now, I think we're 7th or 8th, just depending on which recruiting site you look at. To get to that point where I think Auburn should be every year in the top 10 with the amount of NIL money we can throw at people, the facilities, we have the history of being a great team, and that's the kind of thing that these players are going after. And that to me is really exciting that we can do that. And even right now, you're kind of looking at the next recruiting class. That next recruiting class is currently at the 5th nationally. And so obviously you want to keep that, maybe even do better. And if you have 2 back-to-back seasons where you're, say 7 and 5 ranking, that's going to be some great talent that stays at Auburn. And I'm really excited to see kind of what those guys play out to be, because obviously these guys, especially the 5 stars, the high 4 stars, that's them coming in. That's what they currently are. But we all know the big jump is from high school to college and making that transition. So seeing how they transition into college football is going to be very important over these next few months for some of these guys, because that will probably determine how much they get to play next year if they redshirt. So I'll kind of give you a high level overview right now. We've got 2 5 stars. We've got 9 4 stars and a bunch of 3 stars, which considering Auburn had not had a 5 star in a long time.
Owen Papo, wasn't it?
Yeah, Owen Papo.
2018 or not? What is that? Yeah, somewhere around there.
That by itself should never happen, and it just kind of shows you where our recruiting was, and where now you got Hugh Freeze and this amazing staff are pursuing these guys, and they're not afraid to go after somebody who's already committed to another team. Obviously, we flipped a couple of guys from Georgia and Alabama, so very excited to see that. And one other kind of key piece, we wanted to get the state of Alabama, and we got it. I think there's 13 guys committed right now, which is about half of our class, and that by itself pretty impressive. And I think that needs to be the core for Auburn, getting a lot of guys in state.
And also top 100 recruits, we have 6. Alabama has 5.
Yeah.
So, just to give you a heads up on the players that are listed in the top 100. Yeah, the thing that, recruiting is weird, right? Because we're like 4th in average player ranking. Georgia has 28 recruits. So what do we wind up with? 20 high school recruits, maybe 21. So
yeah, it's like 23, 24, something in that range.
Okay, so we've added. I forgot we added we added a lineman and a kicker. So
yeah, and those are like preferred walk-ons, I think. So I don't know how that. I guess they still sign. So yeah, I would count it.
I don't know how that works either, but like a lot of you look at these rankings and Georgia has more numbers, right? I mean, they also have, they probably have better overall players, but they have 3 5-stars. We have 2, but they have 28 players. So the more numbers you have, excuse me, the more, the higher your score is going to go up. So, that's where I was going with this. So I think we forget how hard it is, even with NIL where money is a huge deal. You still got to have these relationships. And Hugh came in and had to build those very quickly. Whereas some of these kids, I mean, look, we already have like 8 kids already committed to us. Well, how are you going to come in and build that connection? So I think the point is 2025 should be even better because we've
Yeah.
had time to, we've already gotten several people committed. It just is so much easier to build on that.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's where guys like that have been in the business like Kirby and uh, Saban have they come at guys when they're like 14, 15 years old, and they're just getting into high school, and they're starting to build those relationships, because that's what it usually takes, to get a guy really comfortable with who you are and how they could fit inside of your system, at your university. And Hughes essentially had to come in with essentially right at a year of communicating, talking, building relationships with the moms and the dads and the obviously the players themselves. So big props to them. Definitely want to talk hype about Marcus Harris or Marcus Davis, sorry, our wide receiver coach. Obviously, this wide receiver class would not be here without them. Without him, and then Hugh Freeze, really, I mean, kind of another side piece of this is Hugh Freeze taking a little bit of a step back from the offense, which I think us as Auburn fans in the short term, we were like, come on, like we know Hugh Freeze as he has a good offensive mind, and he just he wasn't using all of that last season. Well, he was using some of that energy, say like on a Monday morning, to go out and recruit and build those relationships. And I think that's where me as a fan, I'm like, dang it, why are you doing this in the moment? And now I'm seeing those payoffs, a little bit with this recruiting class. Obviously, we don't know how these guys are going to pan out, but we have guys. We have higher recruiting classes than, as I heard this, our average recruit level, for this star level, for this class was, I think there was only like 2 guys that were even higher rated, star wise, that Harson had. And that's crazy. Like, again, that just shows you the floor of Auburn's recruiting has gone way up, back to where it should be. And I think that's kind of a very bright spot for Auburn. Let's talk through a couple other of these really big guys that we've got. I mean, we got Amaris Williams. He is a 4-star, 34th in the country. And he was a flip from Florida, which, there were so many of those, just because Florida's in shambles right now. But hey, if Auburn can take a little bit of that and use it, why not? We also got a few other kind of bigger guys for the defensive line. Gage Keys, he's a Kansas grad transfer. He already got his degree and is coming in with some extra eligibility. And then we got Jamonte Waller, 4-star edge. So again, starting to plug those gaps that I think we needed. We had Marcus Harris leaving. We've got some edge guys that are, that are starting to kind of step up, but we need more. We need more depth there. And so I think that's where Auburn saw the need and they went after it. Another one was linebackers in my mind. And we went after, got some good linebackers. Joe Phillips, he's a 4-star. And I'm blanking on a few others, but I think we had like 2 or 3 linebackers. Yeah, DJ Barber. Who else? I think I had one more. But yeah, Dorian Mossy, who's a Duke linebacker. He already has over 1,000 snaps and 32 career starts. Very good experience, good mature guy. So just to get more depth at those positions was really key. Obviously, wide receivers, we talked about that, but I think that starts plugging a lot of these holes so that this next year we're going to have for sure a solid first string and probably a good solid second string that we can rely on. Any of those guys, that we've kind of mentioned, that you want to kind of key in on, Jared?
No, no. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Outside of your high, the Riddicks and Perrys, I don't know a ton about all of them just yet. I should know more. I mean, I know that I know we brought in some offensive line, some D-line help, and I really think that's I think D-line's probably our biggest need there. And I because we're losing Marcus Harris, so I think that's we need to find people to fill those spots, and and that's where you win in the SEC, right? Offensive and
Oh
defensive
yeah.
line. Yeah. So, and there's a few portal guys out there right now we're after in the secondary. I mean, we're losing DJ James, Pritchett, and Jalen Simpson.
Yeah.
So,
And that was a little bit of a concern. I mean, we got a couple guys on the secondary, but I wish we had gotten a handful more that were higher recruited. Maybe that's, the next round of transfers. Maybe we go after that.
Well, and I think that's going to be huge. We talked all year about K.M. Lee getting experience, right, when Pritchett was injured to start the season. So K.M. Lee is, he's kind of a veteran now. So that's going to help for next year. But yeah, I mean, defense has me a little concerned. Offense, I think as long as none of our offensive linemen leave unexpectedly and we keep our running back core together, I mean, we really got better at offense, honestly, if we keep our O-line together.
Oh, yeah.
Because we elevated the wide receiver room. Everything stays the same, and we elevated the wide receiver room.
Yep. And so I'm kind of the same as you. I feel like defense might be a slight weak point, but I've thought that at the same time, last year, and said, we might have some weakness. And here we are, they managed the weaknesses that we did have very well. And so, who am I to say that we should have gotten more, cornerbacks? But hey, that's just kind of where I'm kind of feeling that there was a little bit of maybe a slight miss, was not getting enough secondary players.
Well, and real quick, I mean, it was essentially like getting a 4-star when Keontae Scott said I'm coming back, and then obviously also Asante. So those guys coming back were big, right? I mean, it's almost 100%. Like that's like landing a recruit. We don't think of it that way, but that was huge.
Yeah, because I mean, in my mind, a guy like Keontae could be like, hey, I've proven a lot. I've had lots of injuries. I'm gonna go test the waters in the NFL, and I would not, I wouldn't question that. I'd be like, go have a great time in the NFL. But what I think is kind of interesting here, I think this is coming up with Jarquez a little bit too, is getting guys to stay is NIL money. They can, hey, you can stay here. We'll, give you a little bit extra NIL money. That speaks a lot because, going to the NFL, even these free agents are not getting paid that well. And you're kind of living, it's not paycheck to paycheck, but it's, hey, if I don't perform, I'm not getting paid. I'm getting cut from this team. Whereas if you're in college, NIL money is pretty much guaranteed. You just do your job, play, stay on the team, don't get arrested, you get your NIL money. And I think that's a big pull.
Yeah, NIL has a lot of flaws, and the portal have a lot of flaws, but there are some good to it, and it's giving players the freedom. Players were having to leave, to support a family or before they got hurt, go make money, and now this allows guys to make different decisions and come back and they probably enjoy college. A lot of these kids never wanted to leave; they wanted to stay, but they had to go make money. So now they can do both. We should probably do the math one day and figure out, okay, at what point can you make the same coming back? Like, to me, I know we've talked about it, but if Jarquez is going to be, third or fourth round running back, can Auburn match that? I think they could. I mean, I think that they probably fourth round. I think we could probably match that money.
Well, I was just looking at On3, and they just do like essentially a prediction of how much NIL money a player is getting, and currently they kind of value Jarquez at about $115,000, which again blows my mind. Players getting paid that much, but that's not even like top end. Like, some of these players are getting legitimately like $1.5 million deals. So there is money probably to throw more at him. To get Jarquez, and I've even heard somewhere in the range of like 400 to 500,000 to get Jarquez to stay. Is that actually going to happen? I don't know, because that's closed door. They never, at least right now, reveal NIL money.
Yeah, I would think it's more in the 500 plus range. If if there's any threat of him leaving, if we're like, you're not leaving, then
Hmm.
maybe you do it for less. But if there's a real threat of him leaving, I think you're going to have to probably be above 500K if
Well,
you
I
want him.
mean, he's kind of sad. He's 50-50, which he doesn't have a clear direction which way to go. So I think these next few days and weeks are going to be important to him, staying or leaving. And to kind of tie this back to this, National Signing Day, Auburn didn't sign any running backs, which to me says something that Auburn is highly confident in our running back room right now, to not have to go after a running back to get them. And that to me kind of says we have a good shot at keeping Jarquez when I mentioned on the podcast a few times. I was kind of already almost just ready to say, yeah, you're done. You're going to the NFL. You're very talented. But obviously, this NIL money is kind of keeping him around, making him think a little bit more about it. Um, let's also talk about a couple other kind of, in my mind, very big recruits that we got. Walker White, quarterback, 4-star. Clemson was going after him and really kind of had him for a long time until Auburn came in. And apparently Auburn's pitch for him was even better than what Clemson had. So I've already started to really love Walker White just because you can tell he's going to be a leader. He he looks like a man, which is pretty crazy. He's only like 18 years old, still in high school, but he looks very grown up, and you can tell he's got a maturity about him. And he's got a great deep ball. So if you go watch any of his highlights, you're bound to see some good deep ball. And just the way college football is now. Like think about LSU and Bama and how they scored this last season. Just it felt like at will. They were doing it on these long pass plays, and just guys were getting open. And I feel like we've been missing out on that. And now that we got the wide receiver pieces, and you know, I think Peyton can make those throws, but for sure Walker White, when it's his time, which I think at some point it will be his time to shine at Auburn as quarterback, he can make those throws. So really excited to see him. We also got a few kind of players that I think don't get as much attention. One of them we've already mentioned, Bryce Kane, wide receiver, 4-star. He's a little bit smaller, 5'11", but don't let the size kind of tempt you into thinking he's not to be great. Because I've heard like he can be a super speedster. And he one of the craziest things about him was in doing research, he's only played 2 years of football ever, like organized
That's
football,
crazy.
and he is already kind of a top 4-star recruit, just showing you how talented this guy is. And after having him go through uh, practices, spring, fall camps, all that, you got to think he's just got to he's going to grow. He's going to learn a lot. So my guess is he's probably going to be pretty raw, but he's got the talent. So I'm pretty excited to see that. Um, I also mentioned Malcolm Simmons, another wide receiver, 4-star. Um, pretty fun fact here: he won the state championship in both high jump and long jump. So the dude can jump. And let's be honest, 50-50 balls have been a problem for Auburn, to say the least. We've had a few obviously go our way, but we need some big guys that can go up and that they'll come down with the ball. Um, Also, I was kind of looking into Malcolm Simmons. Apparently, at some point, Auburn was looking at him not as a wide receiver, but potentially playing some defensive back, which again kind of shows you he's an athlete. Even in high school, he played some running back, so it's like he's a very versatile player. Excited to see what we could do with him. I could totally see something like a Malcolm Simmons speed sweep or something in the future, just with how fast and high he can jump and all that good stuff. I think those were kind of the main ones. Jared, any other ones that you wanted to pull out that you wanted to talk about from our recruiting class?
No, I think we kind of hit it. I mean, we appreciate all of them choosing Auburn. I know they had a lot of options, and so we thank y'all for choosing us, and definitely excited about the future. And let's get through this bowl game, and then start focusing on those guys for the future. And some of them will be here. They'll be on campus in spring, and those guys will have kind of a leg up. And I don't know if Perry's going to be here in the spring. I think Cam will be, but
Yeah.
yeah, and recruiting's not done. I mean, there's another big guy that big in recruiting stature that may come our way. It's between us and Bama, and if that happens, that we'll be climbing up the recruiting rankings even further. So we'll see how that turns out.
I mean, people are talking if we do get. Are you talking about Ryan Williams?
Yeah, Ryan Williams. Yeah.
And if we get him, and maybe that could potentially push us up to like 5th recruiting.
Yeah.
Which
I
mean,
I think
love that. I love that. Which
huge.
again, kind of the talk, hey, it's Auburn being Auburn, and Auburn's being Auburn right now. We're pitching Auburn and showing Auburn, and I think it's starting to pay off. And Hugh Freeze obviously leading the charge and all that, I think is obviously paying some dividends already. I'll mention a couple of just quick ones. Caleb Harris, he came from Thompson High School, which is, I didn't go to high school there, but grew up in Alabaster. And so pretty cool to see him getting picked up by Auburn. Very physical safety. So you gotta love a good safety that's not afraid to hit somebody. I mean, just the way Auburn, I feel like, is able to develop safeties and secondary players. If you come in as a 3-star, let's be honest, you're not leaving as a 3-star. You're probably leaving much, much better. So excited to see what Caleb can do. I also mentioned this, the hometown kicker, Towns Magoo. He came from Auburn High School, and I saw his fun video. He got to officially sign with Auburn as a kicker, and part of it was his family, and he was with the coaches on Auburn's campus, got to celebrate. So I feel like that's kind of pretty special since he lives there. It's not just sign your paper, fax it off, and you're done. It was a little bit more of a celebratory thing, kind of with everybody. And hey, I know we got Alex McPherson, and he's technically a redshirt freshman right now. Is he a freshman or sophomore? Well, I'm not thinking he's a sophomore, but I think he's a freshman because Anders
I think
I don't think he burned
freshman.
it.
He could go pro after next year.
Yeah, and I mean, if he really wants to, I mean, his brothers Evan McPherson's out in the NFL, so it could happen. I feel like that doesn't always happen with kickers. Usually they stay the full time.
Not much. But if he goes through all next year and doesn't miss a field goal either, he might get some calls. So.
No, if that happens, he will have to really seriously think about it. But it's pretty cool, to see Auburn. We know us as having great running backs, and more recent years great defensive backs. But these kickers, we have legitimately had great kickers for the last 15 years, and you don't have to necessarily think too much about the kicking game. Which, if you watch any college football, kicking is not reliable for most teams, and Auburn's had that luxury. Jared, any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, sir. I think we've covered it all. It was a good recruiting weekend, and let's just keep that momentum going.
Yeah, for sure. And I was really excited to see a lot of players announcing they're coming back. So I'll mention Damari Austin, Keontae Scott, Eugene Asante, Rivaldo Fairweather. I'm sure there's others that I'm missing, but those were just some that came to mind. And really excited to keep those guys because all of them had a piece in this team, and I'm excited that they essentially, like we talked about, getting re-recruited to stay. It's happening for those guys.
Yes, sir.
You can kind of feel that momentum building into this next year, which in my mind starts with this recruiting class.
Yes, sir.
Once they come on campus, man, it's going to be exciting.
Absolutely, my friend.
All right, Jared, how can people stay in touch with you?
You can find me on Facebook under my name, Jared Davis.
And you can find me on Twitter at AJAY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger and War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.